Yeah, after some 3 minutes.
When you are involved in negotiations of any kind, there are challenges that you can anticipate, and there are challenges that come your way totally unanticipated. You find yourself negotiating not only with your counterpart, but with people in your camp as well. And of course, there is this public relations aspect of handling the media. So these were all different challenges. Of course, these are on top of the technical challenges that you face. In the case of Cyprus, we have divided the Cyprus issue into 6 main headings: governance and power sharing, property, economy, relations with the European Union, territorial adjustment, and security and guarantees. And each one of these had many subheadings, each of them quite challenging. Up until we reached Ekran Montana, property issue, for example, was deemed unsolvable because of the huge complications. And how to finance it was also a big question mark. But what I used to do, everyone does it in their own way, but whenever you are faced with a big challenge, the way to go usually is to divide it into its smaller parts, subparts, and try to handle them within a smaller context. So that was the strategy that we used, which proved to be very successful, because when you do that, you can always find the right people to assist you. Negotiations is never a one-man show. It's always a huge team effort, and you have to find the best people to come and help you. And to keep the team together and motivated. For me, the biggest challenge was how to bring people with you forward, and how to give the right information in the right way, because there is a dilemma. On the one hand, you want to maintain public support. On the other hand, you want to preserve the confidentiality of the whole process. So that was a very hard balancing act. In the end, the biggest challenge, of course, which we failed to overcome, was to maintain the political will to cross the finishing line. That proved to be one challenge that, unfortunately, we could not overcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Özdil. The next question is for Mrs. Xenia Constantinou. So, power sharing has been a continuous issue in Cyprus talks. Do you believe the Cypriot community is prepared for models similar to what emerged in Northern Ireland?
Well, in Northern Ireland, they have this kind of model that they call a consultational model, where everyone is represented. So the communities, they were represented in the cabinet, the ministerial council. The one community had the first minister, the other community had the deputy minister, and so on. So there are similarities in the sense that we're also discussing about how we can ensure this political equality. When we're discussing about political equality in Cyprus, we mean how they will be represented, both communities, at the level that they will feel that it is significant, and that ensures that they have a say. So, to your question, whether they are ready, I think none of the two communities is really ready to share power. Okay? But I believe that there are some models that they can be easier to have a compromise on them. And maybe this is why in the recent years we are shifting the discussion, and we are discussing about having a more loose federation, so that we can keep less competences to the central government, so that we give to the two communities, to the constituent states, more powers to have and to feel that they have more autonomy on those. I have my doubts whether we will be able to have a rotating presidency. I think that living in the Greek Cypriot community and seeing how people react to this possibility, I'm not very optimistic about it, but I believe that models like having this kind of a cabinet with the participation of all communities in specific numbers, similar to a model that we had in the Annan plan. I think this will make people maybe feel more confident about the new executive.
Thank you so much for your answer. My next question is also a common question for Mr. Özdil and Mrs. Xenia. All communities often rely on second-hand narratives about life on the other side, which can create stereotypes and reinforce fear or misunderstanding. As politicians that are working for a solution to the Cyprus problem, what are the biggest misconceptions you believe Greek or Turkish Cypriots hold about life in the north or south? And how might these misconceptions be addressed?
Well, in my experience, one of the biggest misconceptions I think my Greek Cypriot friends about North is there is this, by and large, this idea that Turkey runs everything in the North. And I think the recent election results have shown that this is not the case. Turkish Cypriots do have their own mind, they do have their own political will, and when they feel that the time is right, they do vote for change. During the Annan period, we have also seen this. One would think that what happened in 2004 or later on in 2017 with Mr. Akıncı and now with Mr. Erdogan would change this perception, but maybe it has started to change, but I still get this a lot that, it's Turkey we should talk, it's Turkey. Whereas we have the capacity to influence how Turkey behaves towards us, and I have had first-hand experience of this. So that's one of the big misconceptions. And there is also the other side of this. There are those who think that by and large Turkish Cypriots hate Turkey and they're dying to go back to the Republic of Cyprus. And that the memories of before 74 is not there. This is also wrong. Many Turkish Cypriots, even if they would vote for yes in a referendum, they may have forgiven, but they did not forget what happened in the past. So we have to be very realistic. And of course, the way to overcome a misconception, and there are misconceptions from many Turkish Cypriots towards the Greek Cypriots. Likewise, that, the Greeks, one of the first things I hear is they will never ever respect us. They will never ever accept political equality or our identity. And no matter how much you tell them, listen, these have been my experiences, and in the talks we have achieved acceptance of political equality and everything that would take them under guarantee. Still, those prejudices are very much alive among many people. Yeah, sorry.
Well, yes, I do agree with everything which has been said by Özdil, and I would add also that I think one of the key misconceptions coming from the Turkish Cypriots is that the church rules everything in the Greek Cypriot community. The church is everywhere, and they are all very religious on that side of the island, which is not true, even though the church does have this special, let's say, role in the history of how the community was formed. It's not that they can control everything. And I think from our side also there is this misconception, as they believe that it's similar, so they believe that they are very Muslims on the other side, that they are very, very religious as well. But mainly what makes me quite sad is the fact that when we're discussing about misconceptions today, it's not like when we were discussing about misconceptions 20 or 30 years ago, when the other side were wondering whether how other people look like, whether they are monsters or they have a different color on their skin. Nowadays, my daughter goes to the English school, which is a school that has also Turkish Cypriot kids. And whenever I ask her whether they engage, whether they have any common parties, activities, they don't. So they go to the same school, they are in the same class, because at English school, every lesson is, they are changing their classmates. But we never got an invitation, and we never sent an invitation. So it's not about misconceptions. They know how they look, but they don't. They don't engage in common activities, discussions, and so on. And I do understand that the language is a major barrier, and the fact that there is this geographic division. But I think that only by engaging in some kind of a structured dialogue, you can create the friendships to go even further. Otherwise, I don't think that friendship will be created first and then get into a more detailed discussion about what happened, about how they see differently the history and so on. And the history, of course, is a great misconception. We never understood that the kids on the other side, they are learning a different history with different milestones, with different events, with different argumentation about it. This is all.
Thank you to both of you for sharing your insights and your perspective on the misconceptions. My next question is about Her Excellency Sarah Hamilton. So external actors such as the US, the European Union, and United Nations and guaranteed powers played a major role in both the Irish and Cyprus peace processes. Their role has the potential to foster trust. However, it can be equally introduce challenges to the negotiations. How do you view the role of external actors today? Do you think they are enablers of peace or complicating variables?
Thanks. Yes, so I should explain first of all that for many in the unionist tradition in Northern Ireland, that is, people who believe that Northern Ireland should remain part of the United Kingdom, for them, they see my government, the Irish, as an external actor. And similarly then on the nationalist side, they see the UK, the British government, as external to the whole thing. So I say that to give a sense of the approaches that people come at this from, and it's important context when you consider the peace process and the role of various actors in the process. One of the crucial first steps that happened in the peace process actually happened 40 years ago today. The Anglo-Irish Agreement was signed between Margaret Thatcher and our then Taoiseach, as we call Prime Minister, Gareth Fitzgerald. And that was for the first time that was formally acknowledged that the Republic of Ireland, the Irish government, would have a say in the governance of Northern Ireland. Prior to that, the UK government were the only ones could have any role in how Northern Ireland was governed, policed, run. So with the Anglo-Irish Agreement, it provided a framework primarily for dialogue and partnership on issues that were arising in Northern Ireland. And sometimes academics actually compare this part of the Irish peace process to Cyprus in that, in the sense that in this way, the two governments on either side had a formal role in furthering the interests of the people in Northern Ireland. And they were the guarantors for the people in those provinces, in those counties. The other thing about the Anglo-Irish Agreement that it achieved is that it allowed for the first time really those relationships to build east to west between Dublin and London, and people started to kind of talk, to understand the points of view of others. And it was really a very important foundation for what was to come. And it was for us, it's an illustration of what responsible guarantorship should look like. Of course, then the other factor is that we did benefit enormously from external actors who became involved. In 1977 was the first time that a US president made a statement about Northern Ireland, President Carter at the time, and he committed to contributing financially to Ireland, to Northern Ireland, if progress could be made, and that was enormously beneficial. President Reagan went on and he followed up and he followed through on those commitments, which showed that it was a bipartisan issue in the United States. It went across the aisle, and that was very important. And the other thing about that was, you have to remember that the United States had very strong alliance and allegiances with the UK historically, so they also remained impartial with a partner that was very strategically important to them, and that was very important. And of course, I can't address this question without mentioning the role of the European Union, which really was a key enabler to peace on our island, because it provided that, well, obviously we were all then in the same customs union, same market. There was free movement of people, which meant we didn't need a physical border any longer on the island, which was a major flashpoint over the years. So no longer was our island physically divided, and there was no friction then north to south, which really helped. But it also provided a framework for one, political dialogue between Ireland and the UK. We had to discuss important policy issues under the framework of the European Union. So again, there was a space there for dialogue. But also, we all had to sign up to the codes of the European Union, and that is the fundamental foundational principles of the EU in terms of human rights and respect for self-determination and respect for others and those for their beliefs and creeds. So that all, as I say, it didn't lead to peace, but it was certainly a key enabler, and it was very, those external influences are really critical to the success of a peace process in language.
Thank you so much for your answer. My next question is for Mr. Özdil. The system of guarantor powers, Greece, Turkey, and UK, is unique to Cyprus and remains one of the most debated parts of any future agreements. How do you view the role of guarantor powers and security in a modern settlement? Is this a topic where both communities might find an extended common ground, like, for example, focusing on human security?
Yes, this is one of the most difficult topics. In the period leading up to Crown Montana, we held a couple of technical meetings on the issue of security and guarantees with the participation of guarantor powers and the European Union as an observer. And we basically brainstormed what can be done about this. In 1960, something was created. Right of intervention was given to guarantor powers with the objective of re-establishing state of affairs created by the Constitution. Obviously, that failed. The fact that there were guarantees did not prevent Cypriots from engaging in bicommunal conflict. When guarantors, it is one of them, right, the other two refused. The end result was not re-establishment of the state of affairs created by the Constitution. So in 2004, what it said, the Annan Plan, was the 1960 system of guarantees would continue, but accommodated to the new realities on the island, to the fact that we would now have a bizonal bicommunal federation. In 2017, we went further than that. At the final stage of negotiations there, Secretary General of the United Nations singled out 6 main headings of main outstanding issues. And paragraph number 6, the final paragraph, was on the issue of security and guarantees. And he said the way forward should be a new system of guarantees without the unilateral right of intervention, but one that involves the current guarantor powers and that gives a feeling of security to both sides must be created. And actually, all parties gave their consent to this paragraph, as well as the other 5. And so we were under the impression that once that is accepted, this would allow us to conclude the final stage of negotiations, but we all know that it didn't. But looking ahead, right now, we have 2 leaders who both say negotiations must resume from where it was left off in Crans-Montana, upholding all the agreements reached until then. And this consent given to Guterres' outline is part and parcel of that, in my view. So it shows the way ahead that the middle ground, the compromise, and which, as was said, any negotiated agreement has to be a compromise deal. The compromise on the security and guarantees issue seems to be have been encapsulated by Guterres in paragraph 6 of his framework, that a new system without the unilateral right of intervention, but nevertheless, that involves the guarantor powers in some way. The details, how it will be hammered out, of course, I don't know. That's up to the leaders to negotiate. But I think the frame of that discussion has been very cleverly designed by the Secretary General of UN now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Özdil, for your insights. The next question is for Mrs. Xenia. So, given your unique dual experience as a former member of the House of Representatives and an active supporter of civil society initiatives focused on youth empowerment and cross-community reconciliation, could you share your perspective on how crucial sustained dialogue and collaboration efforts between diverse communities are in addressing Cyprus' long-standing divisions? Furthermore, how do you perceive the parallels or differences between the peacebuilding and political dialogue processes in Cyprus and those in Ireland, considering their shared histories of conflict and reconciliation?
Well, I remember when we did the site visit in Dublin and then in Belfast, we were together with Mr. Özdil Nami. I remember that when we were going out for a drink, that the Cypriots continued discussing among them and saying that there was so much violence here. There was so much violence here, you know, that there was this bloodshed in the streets and so on. And this is why they were so engaged into the dialogue. This is why they had to be committed, because if they were not committed to the dialogue, the violence was there, ready to revive again. And they were saying that to explain why in Cyprus we do not remain so engaged into the dialogue. But the dialogue actually is the only way to solve anything and to get into a compromise. So I truly believe that if we are honest, that the status quo is unacceptable for both communities for different reasons. But if it is indeed unacceptable, then there is no any other way than through the dialogue to solve any issue. Even when we agree that we disagree, we should still continue to discuss. And I remember that one of the diplomats that we met in Ireland, that he said, do you know how many times we thought that we would never manage to get into any compromise? Never, ever. And when you are listening to the way that the negotiations, they were processing, and then they were stopping, and then there were all those backlashes and so on, they said that one day it happened. So I mean that it's very easy to get disappointed And I hear many Cypriots saying that we have been discussing for 50 years now. Nothing has happened. We have changed so many leaders. We had leaders that they were better than others, but still nothing happened. We saw all the leaders from the other side. We saw the best ones, the worst ones. We are still at the same result. So why keep pushing for it? It's the only way. This is the answer.
Thank you for your answer. My next question is for Her Excellency Sarah Hamilton. Drawing on Ireland's experience in conflict resolution and community engagement, what measures do you consider most effective in ensuring that women's voice in peace-building processes, such as those in Cyprus, are genuinely included and not merely represented in a symbolic way?
Yeah, I mean, the role of civil society and in particular, as you know, Xenia, the role of women was key really to ensuring that an agreement was reached that was durable and sustainable, because it was an agreement that was designed with the voices of the people in mind. And that didn't, and that's when I talk about those principles and values that underpin the structural side of the agreement. This is what I'm talking about. These were, you know, issues such as integrated housing or equality of education and parity of esteem, the right for people to choose their identity, and you know, that they have the right to self-determination. All of those values which underpin the agreement, they came from the civil society who asked for those to be there. Example, of course, is the Women's Coalition, which was very influential. And it's important to remember with the Women's Coalition, the women's participation, they were not institutionally supported at the time when it came about. They were a group of women who came together in an informal way. And when they were, you know, you mentioned, Xenia, the violence that was happening, and people knew that this was never going to be a solution to the problem. It was never going to yield the results on either side that they wanted. And they wrote to the main political parties at the time, to their individual political representatives, and asked them, what are they doing to ensure that women's voices are heard, that the issues of families and ordinary working class people are being, you know, accounted for in the negotiation process. And they received no reply. None of the political parties even answered their queries. So they decided to do it themselves. They formed a political party and they ran for election. They came ninth in the election. And that gave them 2 seats at the multi-party talks around the table. And they then were able to shape the agreement. So all that to say, the role of civil society, I mean, it's really crucial. They push political powers, and you have to be dogged. And I've seen from what I've seen from youth groups, other like communal women's coalitions, and others in the region here, who are determined to keep going. So that's all I would really say is, you have to keep at it. You have to hold your politicians to account. You have to make sure that they understand how this affects your life. And you have to have kind of courage to reach out as well across the divide. But I've seen here that just does happen, and it can happen. But it takes people to remain engaged and to really want to have their voices heard.
Thank you so much for sharing that insights. The next question is for Mr. Özdil Nami and Mrs. Xenia Constantinou. So, identity played a central role in Ireland's peace process. Cultural heritage has also increasingly been used to highlight shared roots rather than division. How do overlapping identities, Greek Cypriots, Turkish Cypriots, Europeans, etc., shape the outlook of your community regarding a future settlement? What role do you think cultural heritage and shared history can play in reframing the relationship of the two communities?
I think it depends on the way we handle this topic. I'm a bit concerned about the way we are handling it right now. EU is giving a lot of money to protect the cultural heritage, but instead of dealing with the subjective part of it or the untouchable part of it, we are focusing solely on restoring religious sites. Most of the money is going to rebuild churches or mosques and sort of narrowing down this concept of cultural heritage to the domain of religion, which I think is extremely dangerous and divisive, in my view. There are many other cultural elements which are common and uniting us. I want to give you a simple anecdote. 2 weeks ago, I spent the weekend in Paphos with a group of friends. We were about 14 of us. We went there, we spent all of us Turkish Cypriots. And the reason why we went to Paphos is my mother comes from Paphos. Also, a friend of us who also comes from Paphos, who was born and raised there until he was 15 years old, is still in love with Paphos. Okay? So we have a long-standing debate. Which sunset is more beautiful, the one in Paphos or the one in Caribbean? So to settle the debate, this is the joke part of it, but the thing is, we all love Paphos, and we feel at home when we are there. It's part of our identity. So that's something unites us. And at night, we went to a taverna, and we danced with the Greek Cypriot friends, feeling totally at home to Cypriot tunes, So this side of things, rather than being upheld, I think is frowned upon. Whoever appreciates this kind of things is seen like a sellout to the other one. And I think this is a very deeply rooted thing. We have to celebrate our commonalities more, which has been neglected not only after 74, but this has started even before 74, when we even used to live side by side in the same villages, when we used to give brides to each other, like intimate still this was. And if you go on Facebook and look at videos, do some research of the periods between 60 and 74, and you see people coming together for any kind of celebration, you never see a Republic of Cyprus flag. It's either a Greek flag or a Turkish flag. With politicians visiting a village. If it's a Turkish politician, it's Turkish flag. If it's a Greek politician who's holding a rally, it's always you don't see even a single Cypriot flag. Okay, it's only now I think people are appreciating the Cypriot. So I think this has been a long neglected issue that much more can be done, and of course there are many different projects that comes to mind, but we have to take it out of the domain of religion. I think respecting cultural heritage.
Interesting. Well, I remember when we started doing these peace building workshops in 2000, that there was this exercise where they were giving us a piece of paper and a pen, and they were asking us if you have a circle and your identity is Greek, or you have another circle and your identity is Cypriot, or you have another circle and your identity is Greek Cypriot, then how would you place those circles on the paper? And I remember that it was taking so many minutes for each kid to find a way to put down how they felt about their identities, and so much confusion. If we are more Cypriots, more Greeks Cypriots, and the same was done for the kids on the other side. So this whole identity thing, it's very mixed up in the brains of the Cypriots on both sides. And I believe that the only way to cool down is to say it's okay it's okay. You can feel whatever makes you according to your family, the way that you were raised up. If you feel more Greek and less Cypriot, or if you're feeling more Turkish and less Cypriot, it is okay. And I think that the identities should be respected mostly, and we should respect each other's identity. And this is what cultural heritage, and this is what civilization, and this is what multi-perspectivity in history can create. And this is why I believe that if we are honest about the fact that we want in the near future to live together in a federation, then I think that the only way to achieve that is to stop feeling so frustrated whenever we see the other not behaving the way that we are expecting them to behave. Because these things will never go away. The symbols will always be there. And the Greek Cypriot politicians will always have also the Greek flag, and the Turkish Cypriots maybe the Turkish flag. So we should learn to embrace that and even to love that. This is what we are. We are an island that has a long history where the things were not always clear. Huh? And we have two communities, and the people among those communities, they also feel differently about what they are and what identity they embrace the most. So let's try to be cool about it. Okay? And mainly to learn to respect the other, even if the other is someone from your own community who feels and acts and has different priority beliefs, or someone from the other side. Let's try to understand that we can have some kind of a constitutional patriotism to respect and to love, mainly our new constitution and the fact that we will all be equal under that constitution, and to stop always having these sentimental reactions about our national and ethnic identities. No one is going to take your identity away from you. It's what you have. Let's take it a step further though. We've had enough of this.
Here, here.
Thank you so much for the answers. My question is for Her Excellency Sarah Hamilton. Having been appointed as Ambassador of Ireland to Cyprus since September 2025, you are stepping into this role at a significant moment for both our countries. Looking ahead, could you share your key objectives and visions for strengthening Ireland and Cyprus relations?
Thank you. Yeah, I feel very lucky to be here at this particular moment. There's a busy year ahead. I'm sure everybody's aware that Cyprus, of course, takes on the presidency of the European Union come January, and Ireland then takes over the second half of 2026 European Union. So we will be working closely together, and I'm looking forward to facilitating that collaboration. We've already been working hard at the political level to align our priorities. Ireland and Cyprus, as we know, share many similarities. Both islands, both at the peripheries of Europe, small EU member states who have to, have many of the same challenges, face many of the same issues. So we need to kind of work closely together at an EU level to ensure that that the interests of our people are accounted for in EU decisions. So the EU strand will be, of course, very important. But also, I want to have more of these kind of dialogues to hear from you and from your experiences, and to see what Ireland can learn from the Cyprus outlook. We're two islands linked by very similar and very sad histories that are shaped by our geography and by the events of the past. So we have a lot to learn from each other, and so I'm looking forward to continuing this dialogue and to learning more about this beautiful island.
Thank you so much. The next question is for Her Excellency Sarah Hamilton, as well as Mr. Özdil Nami and Mrs. Xenia Constantinou. So talking about traumatic history can help healing, but if mishandled, it can also deepen division. How can we create a space for talking about past trauma without allowing those conversations to entrench students further?
I think where you are living right now is an example of what can be done. We have to get people in safe environments and allow them to express their feelings, traumas, whatever. I remember in the period leading up to 2004, we had academicians arriving from Harvard University on peace, reconciliation, and conflict resolution. And we had people attending from different political backgrounds, right wing, left wing, center. But there was a methodology followed, and which allowed us to have healthy conversations. Maybe looking ahead, those methodologies can be revitalized, maybe updated and used, but it is there has to be a conscious effort to move in that direction, not to use trigger words, be respectful for the other, and have setups that tell people we are not here to win an argument. We are here to better understand each other. And that's a huge challenge. And as I said, I think both leaders should take this very seriously in anticipation of a settlement. Because one way or another, we will have to reach a peaceful settlement. That means dialogue. That means being able to talk to each other in a civilized manner without aggression. Unfortunately, the trend is not on our side. There are extremely worrying trends whereby we see fascist, extremely nationalist political movements gaining ground for one reason or another. But we have to make a conscious effort to fight against them.
Yeah, I mean, it's true to say that a significant portion of the population in Northern Ireland still to this day deals with a significant level of trauma and are still battling to deal with the legacies of years of violence and conflict and division. So it's very present. The risk of repeating myself, the best way to deal with it, and really what Özdil is saying speaks to this, is responsible political leadership. We have to expect our political leaders to act in the interests of their people and not to just continuously relitigate the past and keep drawing up old issues, old trauma, continuously re-traumatizing society. So we have to approach dialogue and contact in a very trauma-aware way, with keeping trauma in mind in all of our dealings between the communities. It's very difficult, but you have to be sensitive to the views of others and the experiences of others. The other thing we do, of course, in the Department of Foreign Affairs and the Irish government is we support many great organisations who are designed to address trauma, legacy, and have great methodologies for doing that. So we've benefited also from funding from the European Union, so it's a really a whole of society approach, and there has to be sort of a wraparound response to trauma, and to not continuously going backwards, to keep moving forwards, looking forwards.
Yeah. Well, indeed, the trauma, I think, is very hard to overcome, and it's very hard to reach to the point where you can understand that pain has no color, has no race, has no ethnicity. And a good example of this, which already, I think it's a good example, is the case of the missing persons in Cyprus. And the missing persons, and in my own family also, my uncle, the brother of my mother, is a missing person, was a missing person. And I remember growing up with so much hate for the other community, so much hate in the constantly throughout the year, especially when we were approaching to those days that he disappeared and so on. I remember all the stories and so on going on. But after years, when my mother met with Sekuru Luda, a Turkish secret reporter who was working on the cases of the missing persons in Cyprus, she suddenly saw something completely different. She realized that there are also missing persons from the other side, that the pain of the mother or the sister is exactly the same. She got engaged into this communal ad hoc committee of relatives of missing persons from both sides, and they were trying to encourage people to give anything that they knew about cases of missing persons. And I believe that this is a good example of how you can come to terms with your trauma without allowing to your trauma to poison your own life and the lives of your children, and to keep this going on and on for generations.
Thank you all for your answers. My next question is for Your Excellency Sarah Hamilton. The Northern Ireland negotiations are often simplified internationally as a template, even though the process was far more complex and unique. What is one lesson from the Northern Ireland negotiations that is often misunderstood or oversimplified in international discussions? And how is it relevant for Cyprus if it is?
So I think on this one, I will go back to the question of getting the correct balance in agreement between the political governance structures and the values and the aspirations and the principles that underpin it. Of course, the institutions that were created under the Good Friday Agreement are testament to negotiation, compromise, and creative solutions. And they provided the political level with the kind of the cover to go back and sell the agreement to their people. Getting that institutional structure was correct was vital, and that's why it's endured pretty much intact for the past 27 years without any great significant changes to the structures, because they work and they've got buy-in. But one of the key principles that underpin that is this notion of parity of esteem, that no matter from which tradition you come or what you believe is your identity, then it should be respected. People in Northern Ireland, they can choose to believe that they are British, they can choose to believe that they are Irish, or they can choose to believe they're Northern Irish. And they're entitled to passports from Ireland or from Britain. So it, rather than bringing it down to a zero sum of sovereign identity, it's about personal self-determination. And there's a respect from all sides and parties to the agreement to uphold that basic principle. The agreement also provides provisions on human rights, which are very important, and Ireland and Britain signed up to the European Convention on Human Rights. That's been very important to give people who have, again, experienced trauma during the Troubles, that they feel that they have a recourse, or that their rights are somehow protected, and have a system that enshrine their rights, and they can be addressed if they feel that they are not being addressed properly. But the most important thing, or perhaps the most important to the communities, is structures out there to ensure that they have accountability. And thankfully, we reached a very important agreement in September between the Irish and British governments on a reconciliation framework, which provides a very solid path for families to get answers, for inquests, for investigations into incidents that may have happened in the past. So that sense of accountability is also very, very important. So it's an illustration really of how peace and reconciliation can work as a package.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for your very inspiring answer. My next question is about Mr. Özdil Nami. So comparisons between Cyprus and Northern Ireland are often made, yet the two conflicts unfold in a very different historical, demographic, and geopolitical conditions. The peace process of Ireland demonstrates how consistent leadership and structured dialogue can move a long-lasting conflict towards resolution. Meanwhile, Cyprus has struggled with similar movements, such as the Arab Plan and Krasno-Antlatana, in lasting progress. With these parallels and differences in mind, which elements of the Irish negotiation model do you think could realistically be applied to the Cyprus context? And what factors do you believe prevented Cyprus from adopting or benefiting from such approaches in the past?
Yes, I think this is a very important question. Now that we are hoping negotiations will resume. In Ireland, I was struck by a few things. First, the inclusivity of the process, which was a striking difference to the way we handled negotiations. Here, people know almost nothing, and it was always a leader-led process with almost zero transparency. I think that's a huge problem. So if I was in the shoes of our current leaders, one of the first CBMs I would do would be to ask UN to publish all the convergences reached until Montana, have them translated into Turkish and Greek, and publish them and facilitate discussion on both sides to achieve this transparency. Then we should find methodologies that would make the remaining part of this process more inclusive. Find ways, help the ways of involving young people, women, other groups of the society, so that this ownership is felt more deeply within the society. So I was struck by that. Second, envisage institutions, both for now and after solution, to uphold the settlement. Because we should not be under the illusion that it's going to be a big bang thing and we will sign a deal and we live happily ever after. No, it's going to be an ongoing process and we need to be prepared for that. Two more points. One, in Ireland, there was this, it was mentioned, the sense of urgency. There was blood on the street, there was violence, and there was this sense of urgency. There was something similar to that in the period leading up to 2004, because EU had decided to enlarge, and they wanted Cyprus to become a member of EU in a united fashion, but we missed that boat. We don't have time to go into the details now, but we missed that. So we need to create another way of creating that sense of urgency. And in Ireland also, even though they exhausted a prolonged period of negotiations, they were unable to put the final dot on the line. They were unable to finish it. And that's when the Americans stepped in and sort of gave an ultimatum and put a time limit, saying that you have this much time. I don't remember, was it 2 months or something? That they were.
His wife was pregnant.
Something, there was something, but an ultimatum was that you have talked enough, you have exhausted all methodologies, everything, you have this much time, you better round it up or we are out. Financially, security-wise, and you'll be left on your own, and it's going to be a mess. So I think in all successful negotiations, these elements should exist. And actually, I think this is what our current leader, Mr. Erdogan, is trying to introduce into the equation when he says this time around, when we sit, it should not be an open-ended negotiation. There has to be a time limit. At the end of the time limit, there must be some kind of an arbitration and equal consequences on both sides. Whoever rejects a deal should face some consequences. And I truly hope Madam Olguin sort of focuses on that discussion and how to make that happen. Because once you have those in place, I think negotiations have a much better chance of success.
Thank you so much for your answer. My next question is for Xenia Constantinou. Having visited Ireland with the Cyprus Dialogue Forum and witnessed firsthand the significant role Women played in shaping the peace negotiations, especially through the work of the Northern Ireland Women's Coalition, what insights can you share about the importance of including women in peace building and political dialogue in Cyprus? How do you believe increased female participation and the inclusion of women in negotiations could influence the prospects for lasting reconciliation on the island?
But indeed, women are absent from the negotiation process throughout the years since the 1960s. But I think it's not only women, to be fair. It's what Özdil said and mentioned before. It's not an inclusive process. It's always the two leaders. The two leaders are always male, and they have more males, usually lawyers around them. No offense, Mr. Nami. The women are absent, the young people are absent, but also the trade unions are absent, civil society is absent. When we came back from Ireland, I believe that we all tried to lobby it around to, and maybe this is the result of what the two leaders decided, but eventually never took place, to create like a civil society committee so that they could give some ideas about confidence building measures and so on. I believe it's an opportunity now. If we're going to start the process, I think that this time the process should also be different. I know that there are ideas around about having two tables, two strands, maybe even a third strand about the civil society, which and was something which was proposed by Mr. Elfman to have the people proposing ideas about how to improve the issues of the daily lives, which I also find very important because maybe people do not really understand of the constitutional issues of the problem, but we can understand that if someone is striving to go to the English school from Kyrenia is facing several difficulties, crossing the checklines and so on. So there are things that we can do. What I wanted to add though is that in Cyprus, people are conservative overall. They are reluctant to change. And I believe that people accept change either because they are afraid or because they see a good opportunity in it. So I think that this time we should try to link this whole process with the opportunities and not with the fears. Because with the fears, we tried it several times and it didn't work out. So I believe that this time we should somehow try to link it with some opportunity for the people on this island, so that we don't go back to the people and we start arguing as the politicians that if you do not accept the new plan, then TRNC will be recognized and they will have a direct trade and so on. No, we should try to say something to them that they will make them feel that this is a great opportunity for us and for our children.
On this, I strongly disagree.
Thank you so much for your valuable insight. My next question is for Her Excellency Sarah Hamilton. Given your recent arrival in Cyprus and your deep familiarity with the history and experiences of the division of Ireland, how would you describe the social and political impact that the division had on the people of Ireland? From this standpoint, do you detect any parallels or differences between Ireland and Cyprus?
Thank you for the question. Of course, it has really had a deep influence on everything that's happened in Ireland over the years. And it, for many, many years, was our number one political priority. It was, and it really dominated our foreign policy. It dominated our economy. prevented our development for a long time, not only because we were, stuck in this loop of division and conflict, but also because there was the investment climate wasn't there. Companies didn't want to come and set up in Ireland. It wasn't seen as a stable place to do business. So that also has had a huge impact since we've managed to have our peace process. Ireland, I'm sure people are aware, has gone from strength to strength economically. We've had our ups and downs, but it's seen now as a gateway to Europe, a place to do business, a stable place to send your children for their education. So it's really had a huge cross-cuts everything in both sides of the island. So I think that's the main thing. But just listening to what Xenia and Özdil have said as well about the importance of including and making sure there's an inclusive process, I think that's also been instrumental. But if I could say that, it's something you both have been there, so, we haven't really been 100% successful on that. We still live in a very divided society, particularly in the north of Ireland, and there's huge problems still. The education systems are still very separated, sports very separated, still very much divided along sectarian lines. So I think, Cyprus has an opportunity, I believe, to get this right. You have the benefit of the other peace processes that have happened around the world, and what works and what doesn't, and whether it's a parallel structure or it's people at the table, I think it's very important that that dialogue with civil society happens, so that there is that sense of hope and there is that sense of ownership of the process, that when it comes, that society is prepared for it. And I mean, it is an ongoing project, and in Ireland as well, it's a living process, and it will always take work. But I think in the meantime, here in Cyprus, I think it's very important that those structures are put in place, and those confidence building measures continue hand in hand with the political process at the same time.
Thank you so much for your answer. My question is the last question. So it's a common question for all three of you, for Your Excellency Sarah Hamilton, for Mr. Özdil Nami, and for Mrs. Xenia Constantinou. Looking ahead, what message would you like to share with everyone here in the room and those listening online? Specifically, what role do you believe civil society, particularly youth, can play in advancing the peace process, and how can individuals and communities contribute effectively to fostering reconciliation?
First of all, my message would be, after more than 50 years, we have exhausted a lot in the Cyprus negotiations, and the moment of truth is with us. We now have a new window of opportunity with the election of a new Turkish Cypriot leader, which must not be missed. And I truly believe Cypriots have to make up their mind now. We cannot postpone this problem and hope that maybe in a decade time a better opportunity will come. The time is now to do it. There are many reasons why I am saying it. Therefore, we have to make up our mind. I appreciate how jokingly I said I disagree with Xenia. I think we have the right to disagree with someone. But people must be told the truth, that the time has run out, even overtime is over, and we have to make up our mind whether we want to get married or we want a nice, clean divorce. This is it. We cannot live with the status quo anymore. It is going to have severe consequences. It is already having severe consequences on Turkish Cypriots, but I think all the developments on the island and in this region show how dangerous it is to remain with status quo. This tiny island is now engaged in an arms race. It's a very dangerous path that we are in. Forces beyond our control are okay. Oh, all right, the battery is off. Yeah, forces beyond our control are in place. But, you know, what is going on in the Middle East, in Ukraine, and what is going on with all the energy-related issues make the status quo even more dangerous than ever before. We have to find a peaceful settlement, one way or another. I think the leaders should wrap it up from where it was left in Crown Montana. What we achieved under Crown Montana was a Cypriot-on-Cypriot process. Nobody imposed those compromises on us. We reached those by our own free will. And therefore, the leaders should simply allow themselves a limited time to finish it up. Let's not forget Secretary General of UN, after Crown Montana reported that the solution was on the table. And what was lacking to cross the finishing line was political will, which means we don't need years of negotiation anymore. Within a couple of months, it can be wrapped up. And then leaders should tell people, you know, do you want this? A nice federation up to EU standards, where you will live under the umbrella of EU. Or if you don't want it, then it has to be a two-state solution. But one way or another, we have to finish this. Of course, in order to encourage people during the campaign, we have to explain why it is better to get united under a federal settlement and be a part of EU and enjoy the benefits for our security and for our economic prosperity, what have you. But even after those deliberations, if people still don't want it, then, like the Czechs and Slovaks did, a velvet divorce should be on the cards. And we have to end the status quo and allow both sides to have their place within international law. This is the worst case scenario right now. So that would be my message. Be ready for this and encourage the leaders to take a leap of faith, to ask this question to their people, to be courageous enough, to say something new to their people. And this is the new element. Now, during that journey, of course, everybody has a responsibility, even an individual person, by attending to the seminars like this, or listening to podcasts, or talking to their elected officials, or whatever they can do. Plus, all the organizations that we have to make this issue a part of our life. If life for us is only about monetary gains, okay, whether with a solution we will have more wealth or not, then we are selling out our country. It should not be about money. It should be something about more valuable, more deeper than that.
I think, yeah, I'll probably just be repeating, I suppose, a lot of things that I've already said, but number one being that civil society matters, and voice of the people matters. When it came down to the referendum on the Good Friday Agreement in Ireland, it was put to a referendum on both sides of the border. It was largely civil society who were the persuaders, who were out there convincing people that this was worth it and the risk was something that was worth doing. When it comes to peace in Northern Ireland, it was never, for us, it was never about dividing power or who could, have more power. It was the principle of the matter, and the values, the ideals, they were really what we wanted to protect the most. So those two reflections, and then beyond that, the other thing to say is that the European project was the best possible framework within which we could find our peace settlement. And I think the European project itself is an inspiration for what can be achieved through dialogue and through compromise, creativity, and political leadership, above all. And it shows that even with the weight of really horrendous events in history, that peace can endure and it can win out. So I would just say to stick at it and continue the dialogue. and to remain engaged. So hopefully, oh, there you go. The backers have told me that's enough. I don't know, Xenia, is that going to work for you?
So, before I forget, congratulations for the discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did as well. And the initiative and for being brave enough to discuss those issues. Indeed, in Cyprus, compromise has a negative connotation. When we say there's a compromise, federation is considered to be a compromise. Nobody wants to do it, but this is why I'm trying to shift the game and explain that it's not a compromise, it's an opportunity actually. It's an opportunity. So I believe that we are old enough not to think outside of the box, but you are young enough to constantly think outside of the box. And I know that young people, you are the most powerful part of the population. I don't think that anyone can say no to you. So take initiatives, I want to remind you about the Technical Committee on Youth. I believe that this is a great new start, and you can seek ways to communicate your messages about what this committee should do, how, whether funding is needed, so that you can start building, designing your own future on this island, away from all the prejudices and the hostility created by the generations before. So again, congratulations, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all of your insight. It was truly very inspiring. I'm sure for all of us, for you guys to share your experiences and share your insights and share your perspective on many of the questions we discussed today. As I know that many of us are probably very inspired by the panel we just had, we will open Q&A session for around 15 to 20 minutes. So if there's any questions, please raise your hand and we'll give you the microphone.
Thank you.
There's the button.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. It was very interesting. And I have a simple question. In the Cyprus processes of reunification, what about the British sovereign base of Ireland?
Please also, I forgot to mention, please say who your question is directed to.
Well, I mean, oops, I think it's really on the flat, like, I'm a visitor to this country, a guest of this country. So, you know, the presence of the sovereign bases is happened a long time before I arrived on the island. So I can't really speak to the impact that has. But of course, the UK plays a very important role, as far as I understand, as a guarantor to the whole process. And they will play a very important role going forward. And hopefully we have Ms. Holguin, who's arriving on the 11th, who we hope to move towards a meeting of the broader format, the guarantor powers. And I know the UK are ready to participate in those talks. So they have a long relationship with the island and have a role to play in designing what the future might look like. But other than that, I can't really comment. Maybe Mr. Nami, you have more to...
Sure. I mean, during the Annan Plan period, the British expressed their readiness to forego one of the bases to facilitate the territorial adjustment between the two sides. As far as I remember, that was still their position in 2017 in Crown Montana. So there was some area of flexibility to help us by the British, but one sovereign base was going to be there, and that was not a big I mean, that was not an issue to be concerned about for us. It was never put on the agenda as a stumbling block or an impediment to our conclusion of negotiations.
Yes.
I get my number there. Okay. So, personally, this is very exciting for me. I have written my thesis on European Union involvement in peace building in Northern Ireland and Cyprus. So this is sort of my area of study. One thing to mention, I could have asked hundreds of questions, but I chose this one, was expanding more on the role of the European Union. Because after the Good Friday Agreement, we have seen the active role of the EU with the peace programs, and now we have the Peace Plus with the EU, UK, Republic of Ireland, and the Northern Irish administration. And we have also seen how dangerous it could be without the EU as a result of Brexit and even the potential of, a hard border or checks within the island itself was a huge problem for both Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland. And even the solution that they came up with, the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Windsor Framework, is very controversial in Northern Ireland, especially with the unionist parties. So for Cyprus, do we need something similar in terms of Peace Plus? Do we need something similar for Cyprus? Because right now we have the aid for the Cypriot community, which does not really answer or is not as big as the Peace Plus project is. And how do you envision the role of the EU during the process we are in right now, or after a potential settlement agreement is reached? Question is for everyone really, but Mr. Özdil Nami and Ms. Xenia, maybe you would be better suited to be talking with us about Cyprus again.
Should I go first? I mean, yes, it is a very important element of the discussions. Actually, we had one chapter, one of the 6 main chapters was EU matters. But that chapter was mainly dealing with how a united Cyprus would function properly within the framework of the European Union, how we would be able to take decisions, how we would be able to prevent deadlocks, abstention, and so be an active participating member of the EU. And it was a very successful chapter, actually. It was one of the main ones that we managed to converge the first. So we know how a united Cyprus can function properly under EU. We borrowed a lot of ideas from Belgium, frankly speaking, but we didn't copy it one-to-one. We accommodated it for the realities of Cyprus. But during the negotiations, the EU was already invited to participate in our work as observers. And they would be invited to share their insights and recommendations of how a particular issue we were debating could be resolved in a way that would also be that would also allow the EU to accommodate it. That was a very important contribution. Many experts arrived. So by the end, all the agreements we reached were in line with not only the principles on which EU is founded, rule of law, respect for democracy and human rights, but also to a large extent with the existing EU acquis. The issue of derogations was also an important issue because, as you know, unfortunately, north of Cyprus has not been allowed, was never a party to the accession process, harmonization. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So you can't simply unsuspend this currently suspended EU acquis overnight. You need transition periods. So we had established expert committees to decide how those can be tackled, how long for any subjects we would need. And we actually had established a very, very important committee during the negotiations, which was called the EU Ad Hoc Committee, to prepare the future Turkish Cypriot constituent state for the adoption and implementation of the EU acquis. So this was a very important committee, in my view, and fully supported by Brussels. And the work had started. And this work allowed EU bureaucrats to come to Cyprus, and together with Greek Cypriot bureaucrats, they would work in the north in relevant governmental offices to make sure that we were ready for the adoption and implementation of the EU acquis. Unfortunately, the day our talks collapsed in Crans-Montana, the Greek Cypriot leadership wrote a letter to Brussels asking them to suspend this work. And that work stopped, which I always thought was a big mistake, because EU is the most common vision we have. Now, our current leader has made a proposal of 10 items in the way of CBMs, and revitalization of this EU ad hoc committee is among them. I hope this receives a positive response, and this work resumes without any further delay, and we proceed as it was originally planned. The issue of four freedoms was a very big issue, because we are talking about a federal Cyprus within EU, which means people will be allowed to live wherever they want, settle wherever they want, work wherever they want. There is a still huge misconception about this among many Greek Cypriots. They think that a bizonal federation will mean a Greek Cypriot will not be allowed to live in Kyrenia, but a German will. Of course, this is not true. So, I mean, there are many aspects of this, but maybe one final dimension was how do we make sure that there is a respect for this Greco-Turkish balance after Cyprus is reunited and becomes a member of the EU, considering the fact that Greece is already a member and enjoys all the freedoms. How are we going to make sure that Turkey and Turkish Cypriots are not put to a disadvantage? But even on that, we had made a lot of progress during the talks.
Well, I do agree with everything which has been said, even though usually we accuse the European Union for many things, but I believe that the European Union is a blessing for Cyprus, and I think that the United Ireland under the EU will be like a safety shield for the rule of law, for the human rights, for the institutions, the functioning of the institutions. So I think that it's absolutely important and necessary to restart the screening of the acquis communautaire in the Turkish Cypriot community. We have to get it ready, since we are sincere about the fact that we want a solution with a specific timeline and deadlines, and we want it fast. It means that, yes, we should start preparing also the institutions, the business, and so on in the Turkish Cypriot community to be able, as soon as Cyprus reunites, for the acquis to be applied to the entire territory of the island. But I truly believe also that from now, the EU has a lot of things that can be done if they took the initiative to do so, especially for young people, especially for grants and funding that exists currently, that could make some special grants for the Turkish Cypriots to study, to live, to do vocational training, and so on. I think that the way that now the European Union is providing this aid for the Turkish Cypriots is not enough, reaching down the people. So hopefully this will not have to take place, because we will have a new discussion at the highest level soon. And we see.
I might just add, if you don't mind, because you mentioned Peace Plus and the role of the EU in the Northern Ireland context. And yes, I mean, it's entirely instrumental really in enabling Brexit. I mean, I could go into loads of different elements. And that's, of course, never, even though we have the Windsor framework, etc., none of it is guaranteed at any moment. It could all fall apart. You know, it only takes a change of government in the UK for everything to change. So it's something, and we rely on our EU partners, and Brexit was testament to how important that was to us. And I must say the support of Cyprus in those discussions were very important. But just a very quick one on the Peace Plus and the project support, which we still enjoy. Just to note that we are going into a new negotiation cycle for the next EU budget, the MFF as it's called. And one of the things that we will be prioritising as Ireland is trying to preserve the funding that's there for the Peace Plus budget line. But, you know, it's just to make the point that
we have the funding.
We do. But I mean, in this MFF negotiation is taking place under a completely different context. The EU is in a completely different place in terms of the geopolitical context in which we're operating now. And there are a whole new set of priorities that didn't exist the last time the MFF was negotiated. So making sure that the funding is there to underpin these peace processes is number one, very important. But also that Cyprus uses the opportunity now to make some progress, to say that, you know, stay with us, make sure that the funding is there, because we are going to need the support. It's going to be so important after the settlement is reached. Let's talk in positive terms, that funding is there and it's ready to go. And that's the job of the EU and the member states, to make sure that that funding is available to support the reunification when it happens.
Thank you so much. We're opening the floor for 2 more questions.
I have a little question, Ms. Constantinou. And you said that there is a power sharing problem, and I do believe that there is a power sharing problem with 2 communities. My question is this: you also mentioned that maybe the Greek Cypriot community could be much able, or maybe could be much positive for loose federation. After the crumble, this idea had appeared, and do you think that this idea of decentralized federation or something like a loose federation would be a new motivation for power sharing between 2 communities on the island? So
Definitely. But I think it has to do mostly with the symbolism, that it's the issue about power sharing is mostly sentimental rather than whether they accept it. Of course we accept it. It's in all the convergences, the fact that we accept political equality. We cannot do anything about it. The thing is how you will make it also look a bit sexy. You know, because to have the majority. And when you feel that you are a member of the EU, I speak very frankly about it, but when you are a member of the EU and you feel that you have the dominance to accept the plan or not, power sharing seems to you like a great compromise that you will have to make. We do have to make it. And I think that the fear that rises whether we will be able, through this way of implementing the political equality, to have also mechanisms that they will be able to solve any kind of disagreement that might rise up. There have been so many scenarios already worked out, some better, some not so good. So I believe it's not going to be something which is impossible to do so. Very often I hear the people discussing about the Cyprus issue and saying that only here in Cyprus you are asking us to do such a complicated model. There is no any other way where they have to apply a bi-zonal and bi-communal federation, and what is this? And it's going to be so complicated. We don't want it. It's better to stay like this. and we see maybe in the future Turkey will collapse and we will do something else. This is bullshitting, okay? We have to make a compromise. It's going to be a political agreement. Political agreements, of course, they are complicated. I'm sure that most people, even now, they don't know what the Constitution actually, all the clauses are. So yes, we have to do a political compromise, but we have to make it in a way that people will feel some kind of security about what will be implemented by the end. Okay, let's not make things very complicated. This is why I'm saying that maybe a loose federation with less competences in the central state, taking into account that we speak a different language, and this is a great issue, will be some kind of a way to pass easier the referendums, and then we can see one of the key elements that shocked me when I learned about the Good Friday Agreement was the fact that on the first page it says that the Northern Ireland will remain part of the UK unless if they decide in the future something else. So it's like an open, up to you. If you want to decide something else, do so. This is very different from what we did here in Cyprus back in the 1960s. And maybe we need to be a bit more loose about how we can see the things evolving. But we need to set up the mechanisms from now, the collaboration mechanisms. We need them from now.
Thank you so much. We'll be opening the floor for one more question. Yes. Please.
So my question is related to Cyprus. I assume it's going to be more targeted towards Ms. Xenia and Mr. Özdil, but if Your Excellency, Mr. if you have something to add, please feel free to. So I wanted to ask about how deep you believe is integrated the us versus them mindset in Cyprus, because of course we have our own problems, and the communities, I believe, is as Ms. Xenia said, that the word compromise has very, very negative connotations, and it seems that both communities, they're focusing on their own problems, which it makes sense because this is basically internal politics and self-sufficiency, and both the problems are all very severe. But at the same time, when I look at it, it's as we're not at all looking at how interdependent they are or how intersectional and mutual these problems are. And this, not seeing it from this joint perspective is what makes compromise seem so negative. And it takes us basically away from compromise or efficient negotiations and just further discussions between the communities. So how do you believe we can kind of take a step back from this mindset? Or how can we make compromise seen as something positive and as an opportunity, as you said, because it will take a giant shift for us to do so.
I think I have sort of alluded to this question before. We have tried lots of positive cues, let's say, to explain people why a compromise now would be beneficial to both sides. But we have seen that the fears are so deeply rooted that the promises of a better future was never enough. The promise of a better future, whether it is of security-wise or financial, are being discounted with a huge interest rate. Okay? And a change is seen highly risky. This is deeply embedded, especially within the Greek Cypriot society. They say that being a partnership with Turkish Cypriots means subduing our political will to Ankara, to Turkey. Ankara will manipulate everything we do through Turkish Cypriots. So it's dangerous to share power. Or whatever Turkish Cypriots will get, they will get it on day one. But whatever we are being promised is left to timetables. How can we trust that they will keep their promises? The list goes on and on and on. Okay, the minute you try to fix one, newer ones come because of this deeply rooted psychological insecurities or prejudices, what have you. Therefore, I think we have to shift a little bit to the other side that Xenia doesn't like, to the fear aspect. That people have to know that their no vote cannot be a simple vote for I like what I have, I want to keep what I have, and status quo is fine. No, it has to go beyond that. Their no vote should tell them that you can't keep the other side hostage. Okay, you have the right to say no. You have the right to maintain your current way of living, but you don't have the right to keep the other side as a hostage. You have to let them go. Now, once you force them to make it such a decision, then all these elements of maybe it's not too bad to be partners with Turkish Cypriots will come to the fore, if you know what I mean, because the price of voting no will be something very tangible. Unless you create that, I am afraid the fears will always dominate the benefits of a solution.
But I do see what Özdil is saying. But my personal view is that back in 2004, when we had the Annan Plan, for example, if it wasn't for granted that the Cyprus Republic would join the EU, I believe that the opportunity there would have made both communities to say yes, because the European Union was a great opportunity. It was something that the Cypriots were looking forward to, and indeed it was very beneficial for the Cyprus Republic. So I believe that incentives is much more powerful than fear. What the incentive can be right now, I'm not sure, but I do know that the Cyprus issue will not be solved by its own, because the two leaders will sit down and they will manage to find a compromise. I believe that the Cyprus issue will be solved only if it's going to be part of a bigger issue, a bigger problem, bigger picture, and so on. And if we can manage to see the big picture in the area right now, we do know that everyone wants something, and we can see that the US is trying to create a new plan concerning the energy to the area. They want to get rid of the Russians and so on. So I don't know how, but maybe Cyprus has a very, very special geographic position, which has created too many problems up to now. But maybe it's about time to create also some opportunity for Cyprus. Maybe by having a pipeline to Israel, maybe this pipeline can be connected to Turkey, maybe it can go through to Greece as the design is. But I truly believe that if we do not convince the Cypriots that there is a great opportunity for this island to become something much bigger than it is right now, I am afraid that we're going to have a division. And if it's going to be a permanent division, it's going to be even worse. But this is not at least what my vision is for Cyprus.
Okay. Would you like to ask a question? Make it concise.
Thank you for extending the Q&A. And thank you for the panel for the amazing discussion previously. This is more of a general question. So if any of the panel members have an opinion, I would love to hear it. I was never born in Cyprus. I came here 7 years ago, but I was born in Moldova, which is experiencing a similar communal dispute rather than a border, where the communities in the country are divided due to more of psychological reasons. That is why, which is why we are facing lack of initiatives from both sides, even though the government is united. So my question is, how would you recommend solving that issue when the regular people do not show specific initiatives? And currently the country is not receiving any funding to create the initiatives for the younger people to participate there.
I mean, I don't know an awful lot about the Moldovan context, but I can speak for Ireland, and that we are very strong supporters of EU enlargement. It was in Ireland that Cyprus came in 2004 and acceded to the European Union.
Yes.
In Dublin, yeah, I was
Just
there.
remember that. Yes.
Yeah, and a very sunny day for once in Dublin. But yeah, so Moldova now is a candidate. It's doing very well in very difficult circumstances. So once again, I think it's about the EU. And recently, I know that there were elections, and the people of Moldova voted very clearly for an EU future. And it's up to us now in the EU to respond to that expression, and to make sure that the prospect of an EU future for Moldova is kept alive, kept real, and that the enlargement process keeps moving forward. I think the more that can really be seen as a tangible, realistic goal for Moldova, that's going to naturally unite the people if they can see that the benefits that are there to be had. It's a very complex region, we know that, a very, very difficult players and actors involved. So there's a lot to be overcome. But I think with the support of the European Union, that goes a long way to getting there. You're lucky in that we're heading into 12 months now where you've got two very pro-enlargement member states who will be leading the presidency of the Council of the European Union. And enlargement is one of those competencies that remains with the presidency. So we will have some say in what happens. There's a tricky situation with Ukraine and their enlargement process. But I know for sure that President Christodoulidis and other members of the government have, I know Deputy Minister Rauna visited Moldova, I think, and Prime Minister Sandu is coming soon. So, you know, they're very committed to Moldova's future in the EU. So it's an opportunity. Hopefully we can work all together to try to see that Moldova joins us in the European Union one day.
Thank you so much. We're gonna end this panel discussion here. We want to express our big thank you for all of you for being here today. We really appreciate, I'm sure all the participants enjoy this fun discussion, and we appreciate you taking the time of your day. And we hope to see you in the future in UIC events and in general, changing the world, as we say.
Yes, and I personally want to thank you as well. And on behalf of my team, United Youth of Cyprus, thank you for your time and your efforts.
Thank you.